Infutor has emerged as as a player in the identity space, and really it started 20 years ago when we were founded on the premise of building identity for identity builders. And while that might seem a little bit redundant, you might have to think about that for a second. Really, what Infutor is, we are the OEM to the data industry. We provide the identity core plumbing for all of the identity, all the data providers in market. And that's where we started out over the last 20 years, and where we find ourselves in the last 5 years is broadening that definition to include as more brands are bringing identity services in-house, or the adtech, martech, and the publishing ecosystems are really driving toward identity resolution inside of their platforms. Infutor is being called more and more into question. And that's really where, right now, people are really, companies and brands are really starting to reach out to Infutor more. It's because of that recognition that we are the original identity provider into the identity marketplace.
So what are the signals, the range of signals that you guys use in your identity solution?
So they would be most, if not all, of the deterministic signals that you would see. So certainly postal name and address, and that would go back. There's a really good longitudinal story there, 30 plus years of name and address information. As you can imagine, Andy, you've moved a number of times in your life. Going back to look at all those different locations you may have lived in, or even I lived in, that would be a really strong component. But also phone number, whether it's landline or mobile, email address. We have over 1.3 billion emails, maids, IP address. Those are the primary identity types we have and that we operate. We also would look at things in the automotive space like a VIN, and that VIN tied to a consumer. Those would certainly be a representative sample of the identity types we have.
How do you use your identity offering in partnership with media companies, with brands, with agencies? What are some use cases, and what's the value that they're finding?
Yeah, so a very simple use case to think about, Andy, is let's talk about a publisher perspective for a second. So a publisher might have a multitude of different pathways or media channels in which they interact with the consumer. Some of those might be an OTT provider where they have a set of subscribers. They could also have, and that could be across a couple, three different properties that they have. They could also be a company that OTT provider might also be an MVPD, and they will have a set of subscribers into their cable operating service. A lot of times those customers, those publishers, don't understand the connectivity across those silos, and they come to an Infutor to find out, help me understand how the subscribers on my OTT property match or are different from or the same as my cable customers. Or they could also have a database where consumers have shown up and started a free trial. And then how do they connect those when that consumer shows up somewhere else at another time and potentially uses a different email address? Those companies come to Infutor to help resolve all those various identity fragments or pieces that we can bring together for them so they can have a better holistic pathway to recognize and onboard those customers and then maintain those relationships into the future.
Now, Kevin, you joined the company from long experience in this field. What is the opportunity moving ahead for Infutor? Where can we expect the business to go, and more broadly, the industry to go in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so I was brought in to really help accelerate Infutor's path, from that original data plumbing business, identity plumbing business, into the future of adtech, martech, the publishing ecosystem. And so you'll see Infutor become much more visible in market as we're pursuing that same path. But you're also going to see, as the Winterberry has stated, that the identity marketplace is growing. Identity is more important than ever. Identity resolution is continuing to flourish. So Infutor has a very strong place in market. So you'll see Infutor continue to evolve its identity offerings, continue to expand as the market expands. Certainly we will do so with an eye toward consumer privacy and trust as always. But you'll see much more organic development. And candidly, Andy, you're going to see us be more acquisitive than ever as we're looking to build and aggressively grow our identity footprint and the platforms in which we serve.
And I wanted to ask you, I'm really happy you're coming to the Beat Retreat. Going to be a lot of conversation about identity. One big topic that we've been reporting on that's certainly going to be a topic of conversation there is interoperability amongst the identity graphs. And there's so many of them, company vendors, big companies, several ad agencies are at it. How does this sort of tie together, or is there a danger that it sort of clashes? I mean, how is this going to be sorted, this interoperability question?
So interoperability to Infutor really means it's got really two dimensions for us. The first dimension is can the identity data inside of Infutor be used across all members of the ecosystem? And so what we strive to do there is make sure that our data can be accessed via batch, or can be accessed in real time or nightly batch, whatever the mechanism is, delivering the data file to the party or hitting a service in a 100 millisecond return, whatever that is. We want to make sure that we've got the means to deliver the identity to the end party in their desired operating system. But the interoperability question also means all of the identity markers in themselves. And so the list that we just went through, making sure that we have those data attributes curated, ready, constantly scrubbed, and highly accurate. We will continue to do that. But also the cookies, as we know, we've been too much has been already written and said about the deprecation of the cookie, and for good reason. But we also spend a lot of time talking about what is the future of identity, what markers are going to be there. Is it going to be an email address that's pervasive into the future? Whatever or even some of these other identity types, like what Trade Desk is doing with their UID 2.0 or any of the others, we are certainly looking at ourselves as a neutral party to ensure all of those identity attributes can be transacted. And that's what we're endeavoring to do, is make sure inside of our graph, those identity types are there, whether it's a persistent ID, transactional ID. We are certainly going to be at the forefront to make sure those graphs are continuing to operate with effect and speed.